When researching historical mysteries, I happen across a great number of strange and incredible people and events from the past that are more than just a little beyond the expected. Hi, I'm Don Hahn, and welcome to In the Margins Beyond the Expected. This is the new side series for this channel that highlights some of the stranger events in history that really make up the foundations for the theories I come up with regarding historical mysteries. And I thought I would start this series off with the Siege of Colchester. Now, this is an event that happens in England in the mid-17th century. It was near the end of the Second English Civil War, and you had two armies, the Parliamentarians, who were fighting against the king, and you had the king's army, the Royalists. The Parliamentarians had chased the Royalists all the way into and behind the walls of the small town of Colchester, and it was at this point that the Parliamentarians laid siege to the entire town, and this would be a lockdown that continued for 11 weeks. Unfortunately for the Parliamentarians, at least in the beginning, the Royalists had a not-so-secret weapon in the form of a giant cast-iron cannon. This thing was massive. They mounted it here on top of the town wall, next to a tower that was part of the Church of St. Mary's just inside the town wall. Now, in the tower, they have this guy that everybody calls One-Eyed Thompson. He's a sniper, so he calls directions down to the gunners manning the cannon on the wall directly below him. He tells them where to aim this thing. So, between his one eye and this giant cannon, they are like decimating the Parliamentarian army below until July 14th, 1648, so about halfway through the siege. Some of the Parliamentarian cannon shots hit the wall directly below the cannon, destroying the wall, destroying the tower, and sending One-Eyed Thompson, the gunners, and the cannon all crashing down to the ground below, killing them and absolutely destroying the cannon. This event is told and retold for nearly a century and a half until, in 1797, a simplified rhyming version of it is printed in a book titled Juvenile Amusements by Samuel Arnold. The rhyme is presented as a riddle, the answer to which is an egg. To make things even juicier, historically speaking, during the battle, the Parliamentarians had an unfortunate nickname for the cannon. It was a derogatory term, usually reserved for people who were larger and clumsy. They named the cannon, and later, the egg, Humpty Dumpty. Now, it did not take more than a few decades before most everybody knows the riddle of Humpty Dumpty. Most people know that Humpty Dumpty's an egg. However, most people do not realize by like 30 or 40 years later that Humpty Dumpty was originally a cannon. Now, if we fast forward to 1871, this is where we get the last piece of the iconic image of Humpty Dumpty we have of him today. It was the author, Lewis Carroll, in his novel Through the Looking Glass, that gives Humpty Dumpty his face. Yeah. Now, this is the same Humpty Dumpty that sat on the wall, the same one that had that great fall with all the king's horses and all the king's men not being able to put him together again. And there's a really big reason for that. I mean, like I mentioned before, the cannon was massively heavy. It would have taken a team of king's horses to lift this thing. Unfortunately, once the siege of the town began, no one went in, no one could come out, so it didn't take long for the people in the town walls to start running out of food, which meant that they had to turn to their livestock and the king's horses for something to eat. So, by the time you get to July 14th, there are very few, if any, king's horses left to lift the cannon. But even if they could lift the cannon, even if they had the materials and time to rebuild the wooden carriage that sits under the cannon, they no longer had a wall on which to set it. So no matter how you're looking at this event was not going to happen. You know, I find it really just weird that an event in history with so much suffering and tragedy has filtered down through the ages to today, in today's popular culture, to be represented by a humanoid, irreparable, broken egg. It's just strange. Even more ironic than that, an event punctuated by so much starvation, has come to be looked upon as an item of food. Food for thought. If you find this at all interesting, I highly recommend you take a look at the different versions of this rhyme since it was first published in 1797. It's really interesting to see how people interpret the same thing so differently. And until next time, my fellow hidden history hunters, keep digging. Thank you so much for watching.